Have you ever noticed how, in the world of faith, spirituality, and religion itself, there are moments when silence speaks louder than 1,000 words? Well, during the traditional Angelus prayer, something completely unexpected happened. Before millions of believers gathered in that moment of prayer, praise, and worship, Pope Leo XIV broke the Vatican's usual diplomatic silence, without hesitation. He did it to raise a desperate cry for the persecuted Christians in China. Yes, my friends, this was not just a reflection, but a firm, courageous, and truly historic stand. So, in this video, we reveal a historic moment. Pope Leo XIV proposes to correct a serious mistake made by Pope Francis. You might not know the details yet, but it's essential to understand this to follow the changes impacting the entire Church. And to strengthen our prayer, write in the comments, "Lord, guide Pope Leo XIV with wisdom and courage." A simple act of faith that unites us all in purpose. Now, let's discover together this proposal that's stirring reactions in the Vatican. Imagine yourself, living your faith freely, attending church, joining worship services, Bible studies, youth groups, and devotional moments. Now imagine if, all of a sudden, all of that was banned. That's exactly the pain Pope Leo XIV chose to speak about, looking the world in the eye, especially those in China who suffer persecution simply for professing their faith in Jesus Christ. And this wasn't just any speech. It was a direct, powerful message that crossed borders and shook the very heart of Christianity. What's even more surprising? Until then, the Vatican avoided making such public statements. For years, a heavy silence reigned, almost an awkward silence, that many faithful saw as neglect. But that Angelus changed everything. On that day, the Pope didn't just mention the persecuted Catholics. He openly acknowledged the suffering of those who keep the flame of the gospel alive, even under threats, imprisonment, and the destruction of churches. And if you think the story ends here, get ready, because what comes next is even more shocking. Few realize, but back in 2018, something extremely controversial happened behind the scenes of faith, church, and spirituality. The Vatican, under Pope Francis' leadership, signed a secret agreement with the Chinese Communist Party. Yes, secret. And do you know the core of that deal? The direct involvement of the communist government in choosing Catholic bishops in China. Imagine that, an atheist regime deciding who can preach the gospel, lead prayer, worship, and even administer the sacraments. This, my friend, set off huge alarms in the hearts of young Christians, Bible scholars, and all who live their faith devoutly and sincerely. This agreement, which still hasn't been fully disclosed, was defended as a path toward dialogue and unity. But wait, unity with whom? With a government that persecutes those who confess their faith in Jesus Christ? That controls churches, bans Bibles, and dismantles prayer and worship movements? You can understand the crisis that erupted. Many believers began asking, was the church trading the cross for diplomatic deals? And, believe me, numerous testimonies of faith emerged from Chinese Christians saying they felt betrayed by the very church they loved and defended. Behind all this negotiation, what was at stake was not just politics but the very heart of Christianity in China. After all, whoever appoints a bishop is, in a way, steering the course of the church, Bible studies, sermons, evangelization, and the devotional life of millions. And that's where a story full of tension, challenges, and decisions begins. Decisions that would change not only the future of Catholics in China but also the church worldwide. And you know what? Things only started to get more intense. Imagine, just for a moment, what it's like to live your faith in secret, unable to raise your voice, unable to freely attend your church, unable to worship, praise, or take part in a service without the constant fear of being discovered. That's exactly how millions of Christians, men and women of prayer, felt when the Vatican signed that controversial agreement. To many, it seemed as though the very church, which should be a mother, a shelter, and a spiritual fortress, was suddenly turning its back on them. And let me tell you, the pain of persecution was already immense, but the pain of spiritual abandonment? That, my friends, tears the soul of any faithful believer. In the testimonies that surfaced, many young Christians and even priests from the underground church spoke with tears in their eyes. They said they felt like forgotten children, left to fend for themselves. It's that feeling of being in the middle of a storm, holding on to just a thread of faith, while those who should protect you seem to close their eyes. And here's a deep reflection. How many times in our own spiritual walk have we felt this way? Lost, ignored, without answers? And it's precisely in those moments that prayer and Bible study become our anchor. And do you know what's the most shocking part? Many faithful began to wonder if it was really worth standing firm in their religion when even the Vatican seemed to be negotiating what was sacred to them. But here's the thing. The Gospel teaches us that true faith doesn't depend on human institutions, but on a living, intense relationship with Jesus Christ. It's the kind of faith sustained by the witness of martyrs, the strength of hidden praise, the worship that happens even in the silence of caves. And if you think this story is already intense, just wait until you see how Pope Francis' name weighs heavily in this story. You simply can't talk about this agreement without mentioning Pope Francis directly. After all, it was under his pontificate that this historic, and for many, extremely controversial, decision was made. And that's where the divisions start. Some defend the Pope, believing he acted with a sincere desire to preserve the Church's unity. Others, however, accuse him of giving in to political pressure and even betraying the martyrs of the faith. Yes, my friends, the word betrayal echoed through the underground church in China and reverberated inside the Vatican itself. What shocks most is that for many, this wasn't just a diplomatic decision, it was a spiritual scandal. How can anyone accept that bishops appointed by a communist regime, which has historically fought against faith, could now be officially recognized by the Church of Rome? And here comes the question that won't go away. Where do you draw the line with diplomacy when the price seems to be the very cross of Christ? And this question isn't just coming from the persecuted faithful, it's traveled around the world. But hold on, it's not as simple as it seems. Some experts say Pope Francis believed that, despite the concessions, this agreement could open doors for freer evangelization. A hope, a sliver of light. But doesn't the enemy know how to disguise himself as an angel of light? That's the real reflection here. And if you think this topic is heating up, the next part dives into something that, honestly, sends chills through any Christian: the internal division within the Vatican itself. Yes, you heard right. Believe it or not, this agreement didn't just cause controversy outside Vatican walls. Inside, the atmosphere became, and still is, extremely tense. Cardinals, bishops, theologians, even members of the Roman Curia split in scandalous ways. On one side, those defending Pope Francis, believing diplomacy might build a bridge for evangelization in China. On the other side, firm, courageous voices, some might say prophetic, that see this agreement as a true surrender to communism. And don't think this stayed behind closed doors. No. Several cardinals publicly expressed their outrage. Respected names within the Church openly declared that this agreement jeopardizes not only the freedom of Catholics in China, but also the moral credibility of the Church itself. Yes, my friends, when the Curia is divided, the whole world notices. Here's a heavy but necessary thought. When the shepherds themselves are divided, who guides the sheep? When even inside the house of Peter opinions clash, what's left for God's people, who often just want one thing: to know where the truth lies? This, my brothers and sisters, is a grave sign of the times. And if you think this internal division is shocking, wait until you hear what the very bishops persecuted in China said about this agreement. The truth hurts, but it must be told. Now, prepare your heart, because this next part is simply heartbreaking. While many in the Vatican try to justify the agreement with China, do you know who rose up in deep pain and indignation? The faithful bishops themselves, those who were persecuted, humiliated, imprisoned, and tortured for years just for staying loyal to Rome, to Christ, and to the true Church. Imagine the pain of these men, who resisted communism, who spent decades in hiding, celebrating Mass in the shadows, administering sacraments in secret, and then suddenly hear that the Vatican recognized the church controlled by the communist government. Yes, my brothers and sisters, this is an open wound in the hearts of these shepherds who shed blood out of love for Christ. And don't think they stayed silent. Many of these bishops, already elderly, their health fragile, sent letters, pleas, cries, begging Rome not to abandon them. Their words cut to the soul: do not betray us. Do not trade our faithfulness. Do not hand over our cross for a handshake with those who want to destroy the faith. Yes, my brothers and sisters, when we hear these bishops' cries, we can't help but ask, how far will this diplomacy go? And at what cost? You know, when we talk about faith, spirituality, and true Christianity, we can't ignore one thing: the pain of those who feel betrayed by their own church. And that is exactly what millions of Chinese Catholics have lived since that secret agreement was signed. Imagine dedicating your whole life to prayer, Bible study, the gospel of Jesus Christ, living in hiding, celebrating worship in secret, and suddenly realizing that Rome reached out its hand to those who have always persecuted you. Isn't that a blow to the soul? And look, this isn't just an emotional wound. It's a deep crisis in the spirituality of many young Christians, whole families who once lived through praise, worship, and sermons held in secret homes, now feel abandoned, left to fend for themselves. They turn to the Bible, seek comfort in prayer, but the feeling is clear: we've been sold out. We've been forsaken. It's as if the gospel itself was bargained away, as if the cost of faithfulness became invisible to those who should be protecting them. And you know what hurts even more? Realizing this kind of thing isn't far off. No, it's right here, even inside our own churches, inside our worship gatherings, when so often leaders choose to please the world rather than stand firm in the Word. And that's exactly what reignites the question in thousands of hearts: how far does this alliance with the world go? And is the price we pay Christ's own cross? Look, whether you like Pope Francis or not, one thing's certain: he's the chief architect of this controversial deal. From the start of his pontificate, Francis made it clear his path would be dialogue, diplomacy, and bridge building, even if those bridges stood on dangerously shaky ground. And that's exactly what he did with China. Many inside the Vatican tried to slow him down, others warned him, but he went all the way. Here's a serious thought: how far can the desire for dialogue push beyond the limits of the gospel's truth? Francis believed, or wanted to believe, that this agreement could protect Chinese Christians, open doors, breathe new life into the Church's mission in that country. But was the price too high? Because meanwhile, faithful bishops, priests, and lay people keep facing persecution, imprisonment, censorship, just like before. This decision by the Pope wasn't just diplomatic. It became a watershed moment within the Church itself. On one side, those who applaud him, saying we need to engage with the modern world, governments, and systems. On the other, those who weep, rage, and feel this is yet another open wound in the mystical body of Christ. And you, have you ever wondered which side you'd be on? No matter how many deals are signed or sermons preached, persecution of Catholics in China shows no mercy. Churches are torn down like someone switching off a light in the dark, and priests continue to suffer in the shadows, denied even the most basic right, to freely praise and worship Jesus Christ. It's a harsh reality, testing the faith and spirituality of those who stand firm even in fear. For young Christians watching all this, there's a powerful lesson. True faith isn't comfort, it's resistance. It's continuing secret worship services, keeping daily prayer alive, even in hiding, small beacons of hope amid the darkness. They must stand strong, because the Bible is full of martyrs who never gave up the Church, even in the face of great suffering. And what lesson can we take for our own lives? Often, we face smaller persecutions, in school, at work, even in family. Like these Chinese brothers and sisters, we need to renew our devotion, our praise, and our worship. Let faith be our shield and prayer our sword to withstand any storm. After all, this spiritual battle is ours to fight together. When Pope Leo XIV took the papacy, something shifted in the Church's atmosphere right away. It's not just words, it's a different tone, firmer and more attentive to those whose faith is silenced by persecution. He doesn't just hear the gospel, he listens to the cry of the underground church, the one suffering in silence, hidden from the eyes of the world. That's spirituality in action, my friend. Feeling a brother's pain in your soul and acting with courage. Leo XIV brought fresh life to worship and services, a call for the church to be a house of prayer and refuge for the persecuted. Religion, which can sometimes feel distant and formal, returned to being lived deeply, heart to heart, especially among young Christians inspired by this example. This change in posture also rekindles hope for all of us, showing that faith does not surrender, does not bow, and does not stay silent. And best of all, this new direction is an open invitation for the Church worldwide to unite in this cause. Leo XIV shows that through daily devotional practice, constant prayer, and Bible study, we find strength to go on. May we, like him, be the voice for the voiceless, living the true mission of Christianity, always ready for a worship that transforms lives and renews hope. Leo XIV carries a personal history few know, but it explains much of his passion for defending persecuted Catholics in China. In his youth, he lived under authoritarian regimes and witnessed repression's pain firsthand. This experience shaped his spirituality and strengthened his faith, showing that prayer and the gospel are more than words, they're the power that keeps the church alive through the storms. This life experience gave him sensitive eyes to see the suffering of the underground faithful. It's not an abstract defense, but a commitment flowing from the heart, just as Christianity teaches us to love our neighbor as ourselves. For those wanting to live out this teaching, it can begin with simple acts: praying daily for the persecuted, joining worship services that include intercessory prayer, and diving deeper into Bible studies on perseverance and courage. Leo XIV shows in practice that true faith is built on action. He doesn't just speak, he acts. His example calls each of us to reflect on how we can be God's instruments in the world, whether through faithful witness in our daily lives, devotional prayer, or involvement in church groups supporting those in need. After all, the church is a living body, and each of us has a part in Jesus Christ's mission. Imagine the impact of hearing firsthand painful accounts from bishops and priests who face persecution every day. This is exactly what reached Pope Leo XIV, a dossier full of testimonies that could no longer be ignored. This document shifted Vatican spirituality, showing that faith can't be bargained away, that the Bible calls for justice and courage in the face of hardship, not complicit silence. These stories are a living sermon, an invitation to heartfelt prayer and intercession that goes far beyond formal services. It's in the real experience of persecuted young Christians that the urgency of a lived gospel is revealed, one that touches the church's heart and inspires all to strengthen their faith in Jesus Christ, even amid the darkest trials. Leo XIV realized he needed to act firmly, promoting Bible study and tangible support for those who resist. This story challenges us to look inward and ask, how have I lived my faith? Am I just enjoying the comfort of worship in my church, or am I truly committed to worship that transforms lives? The dossier is a reminder that true spirituality demands courage and commitment, the very qualities Pope Leo XIV is bringing back to the church, and which will surely echo in the next chapter of this story. It was during a defining moment, the Angelus, that Pope Leo XIV broke the heavy silence in the church. For the first time, with a steady voice, he publicly acknowledged the suffering of Chinese Catholics, shedding light on a topic long treated with excessive caution. This statement was not just a diplomatic gesture, but a vibrant call to faith and true worship that refuses to stay silent in the face of injustice. This public declaration rang out like a sermon heard in every service, reminding us that prayer is not a mere ritual, but a powerful spiritual act that breaks down barriers and strengthens the church. For young Christians and the entire community, it encourages bold testimonies of faith, even in hostile environments. It's a practical lesson not to neglect praise and worship in our own lives during times of crisis. By making this declaration, Leo XIV showed the church cannot be complicit in silence. It's time to act grounded in the gospel, reaffirming that faith expresses itself through concrete and courageous deeds. This new Vatican tone paves the way for the next phase, one that will face the Chinese regime's reaction, a tension sure to further test the faith and perseverance of the faithful. Shortly after Pope Leo XIV's historic statement, the Chinese government's response was swift. Harsh criticism and veiled threats surfaced, revealing the regime's discomfort with the exposure of religious persecution. This diplomatic tension is a clear reminder that faith and spirituality don't always walk on smooth ground, and true Christianity often calls for resistance and courage, especially in hostile places. Despite the pressure, the Pope remains steadfast, emphasizing that the Church will not negotiate the truth of the gospel nor the witness of persecuted young Christians. His stance reminds us that prayer and praise are more than moments of worship. They are spiritual weapons that uphold the community and confront adversity. For those living their faith daily, this firmness is an invitation not to retreat from challenges, but to grow stronger through worship and devotional practice. This resolve also lays the groundwork for concrete action within the Church, reactivating pontifical bodies and new strategies to support the underground Church. A new chapter begins, showing that true faith does not bend, and every challenge is an opportunity for growth in spirituality and witness. This energy promises to drive the next phase of the story, filled with important and transformative decisions. With this firm resolve, Pope Leo XIV took a decisive step by reactivating the Pontifical Commission for the Church in China, a body that had weakened in recent years. This move sends a clear message that the Church is turning its attention back to the reality of the underground faithful, seeking to strengthen bonds of faith and solidarity through concrete and coordinated action. For Christian spirituality, it shows the Church's deep care for protecting its brothers and sisters, even in the most difficult places. Reactivating this commission also means ensuring that Bible studies and devotional practices are encouraged in environments where Christianity is persecuted. It's a call for young Christians, even if they must remain in secret, to keep the flame of faith, prayer, and worship alive, knowing their struggle is not forgotten. This decision shows that the gospel must be lived out in every circumstance, and that the Church, as the mystical body of Jesus Christ, acts to protect and strengthen each member. This move by the Holy See opens new doors to rethink the controversial agreement's future and seek ways to renew the mission of evangelization, without losing sight of faithfulness to the Bible and Church doctrine. It prepares the way for what's ahead, with new strategic decisions that promise to deeply impact Christianity in China and around the world. We can hardly wait for the next chapters in this spiritual and institutional struggle. Faced with this delicate situation, the Vatican is carefully weighing three options for handling the controversial agreement: renegotiating it, suspending it, or issuing a doctrinal statement reaffirming the Pope's authority to appoint bishops. This trio of choices reveals the gravity of the matter. It's not just diplomacy, but the preservation of faith, the Bible, and Christianity's identity in a country that places severe restrictions on the Church. It's a real spiritual and institutional challenge that demands wisdom and constant prayer. The Vatican's reflection invites believers and church leaders to consider how they defend the values of faith in their own communities. When facing hard times, we can turn to Bible study and devotional prayer for guidance and courage, strengthening our everyday witness of faith. Just as the Pope confronts this crisis, every Christian is called to be watchful, persevering in praise and worship even in the face of adversity. Ultimately, this assessment shows that Christianity is not a convenience religion but a mission of faithfulness, requiring firm decisions aligned with the gospel. Whatever the Vatican decides will resonate in the lives of thousands of young Christians, priests, and communities struggling to keep the fire of spirituality burning amid persecution. The upcoming talks promise to be pivotal, leaving us wondering what comes next. The meeting with Cardinal Parolin marked a turning point for Pope Leo XIV. During that encounter, it became clear that the era of quiet diplomacy was over, as the pontiff demanded full access to all secret documents related to the agreement with the Chinese government. This stance shows the Church's priority: transparency and fidelity to the Bible and gospel, even amid political complexities surrounding Christianity. It's a powerful example of courageous, steadfast leadership, inspiring all believers to defend the truth in their own lives. For young Christians and faith communities, This attitude reinforces the importance of prayer and discernment in difficult decisions, reminding us that worship and praise must be rooted in spiritual clarity, not behind closed doors where deals might compromise the essence of worshiping Jesus Christ. Just as the Pope demands transparency, every Christian can seek clarity through Bible study and testimonies of faith, applying this integrity in daily life. This meeting paves the way for the Church to regain control over fundamental decisions, placing spirituality and the mission of evangelization first, without fear of consequences. And this is precisely where the story continues, with new strategies and alliances yet to be revealed, keeping us alert for the next chapter in this struggle of faith. Pope Leo XIV took a decisive step by forming a special commission made up of critics of the agreement, including Cardinal Joseph Zen, a well-known defender of China's underground church. This initiative underscores the Church's commitment to listening to voices once silenced and marginalized, a profound gesture of spirituality and respect for biblical truth. For believers, it shows the Church's attentiveness to the faith testimonies of those facing persecution, making prayer and worship even more meaningful amid hardships. By gathering strong evidence of persecution, the Commission not only documents the suffering of clergy and faithful, but also strengthens worship of divine justice. It invites all of us on our spiritual journey to be vigilant and devoted in our devotional practices, actively participating in Bible studies and promoting worship that reaffirms our commitment to Jesus Christ and the Church. A practical way to live out this faith is by engaging in groups of young Christians supporting social and religious causes, spreading the witness within the community. This special commission stands not only for resistance but also for hope, showing that living spirituality will always find a way to be expressed. So, as this commission moves forward, the world watches with expectation for Pope Leo XIV's next steps, on a journey that promises to challenge established structures and renew faith on a deep level. Now that you know this powerful story full of challenges, the question remains: how can you apply this knowledge in your own spiritual life? Are we letting our faith lie dormant, while the Gospel calls us to active watchfulness, constant prayer, and true commitment to the Church and its teachings? Think about the faith stories we've heard, the words of Jesus Christ, and the life-changing power of worship and praise. Are you ready to be a catalyst for change within your circle, encouraging both young Christians and adults to dive deeper into Bible study and strengthen their spirituality? Why not start right now? Set aside time to pray, attend services, or even organize worship groups in your community. And while we're at it, I want to hear from you. What part of this story touched you the most? How do you plan to transform your life with this new perspective? Share your thoughts, questions, and experiences in the comments, because this journey is something we build together. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you can keep growing in faith, Bible knowledge, and everything that surrounds Christianity and the Church. After all, true transformation happens when we unite in prayer and devoted action. Let's work together to strengthen our spirituality and make our everyday lives a living worship, full of praise and adoration for Jesus Christ. Your faith can be the light that not only brightens your own life but shines on many around you. So, are you ready for this challenge?